Okay, and we'll start it. So if you remember last week, we were trying to create this native app using native script view, and so we're going to continue that today. And also we're going to talk about how do we access the um, local REST API you created in the playground, and which can be a little bit tricky. And so first, just a reminder of what we did last week. And so you can see, and the screen on the left is mirroring my phone, so which currently is, and this one, yeah, so you can see it's mirroring my phone. So this is where we stopped last week. So we're going to continue. So I have to go to my native script view, and I'll try to. Okay, and so this is where we stopped last week, and so we say we're gonna create this to-do app, and so we created two tabs at the bottom, one called task, one called completed, and you can see currently completed task is almost nothing there, and on the my task tab, and you have the new task text area here, and which allows you to type in something and but currently nothing happens yet. And also you also have these things, and which is actually using a view 4 to load from the code. So that's where we stopped last week, and so we're going to continue that. So today we're going to make this work, and so we can type in something here which will be added to the list, and then we can also try to move the task between the tabs. And so, for example, if I want to mark feed docs completed, so that will be removed from the task list and go to the complete tab. So, and then after that, we're going to do a little bit, say, and formatting as well, if there's time, and before we move on to the REST API part. Okay, again, just to remind you, I'm going to have a quick look of the code again before we go on to the more details. Oh, I can't change the size. Okay. And so this is a single, how do I say, a single file component that's dot view, and you have templates. So that's the template section of the single file component, and you need page. So that's kind of default thing. You'd start with your native script view app. Then the action bar. The action bar is basically the top bar here. That's what it will look like. And you have the stack layout. And what it does is it just stacks things one on top of another by default. And in the stack bar, we have two things. The first one is called the bottom navigation, and which is these two tabs at the bottom. And then you have the tab strips. Yeah, and so you have the two tab strip that defines my task and the completed. So the first task strip item is my task, and the second tab strip item is the completed. Okay, and then so that gives you a tab strip, but what you actually need is the tab content item. So this is actually defining the page itself. And inside the tab content item, sorry, we actually have two tab content items. So that's the first one, and what's inside defines the task page, and there's the second one here, and that defines the second tab, which is the complete tab. You can see. So in the complete tab, we only have a label says completed task. That's why we have this text here. Whereas in the first tab content items, we have a little bit more. So we are using a grid layout. So that means you can position things by rows and columns. And anyone remembers what these means when we define the columns? So we have auto, and then a star. Anyone remembers what that means? No? Yeah. So the auto, so first you can see, and that defines I want to have three columns. right? And the auto means the width of the columns depends on the content. So if the content is wide, then the column will be wide, and content is very little content, and then it will be small. And anyone remembers what is star? That's right. So yeah. So star basically means use the remaining space. So what it says, I have two columns. These two will be decided by the width of the content, and whatever is left over will be used for the third column. So that's what the star for. And so it's the same for the rows. Okay. And you say, okay, this is a label which shows, okay, if we go back to, and it says, use the first row, and the text will be my task. That's this one here. And then we had a text field element, and that's the second row, and it's bind to a view variable called text field value, and it has a hint called new task, which is y. And when you don't have anything in the text field, it will show new task as a hint. Okay, and then this is probably maybe the more interesting part. And you had a list view, which creates a list and in native script, and it takes the third row, and then here actually essentially using a v4, and it says to do in to dos. So these are already defined here below, and so that's the to dos. It's an array. It has 3 JSON objects. It has only a property called name. And then this is using v template, and is a label, and you bind the text of the label to do dot name. Okay, so that's and to do dot name. So basically, that's the only attributes. Okay, and so that's what we got so far. Okay, and then we're gonna move on a little bit more. Okay, and so the next step is uh, and so next step is going to actually now to add a task. So when user type in, say for example in the phone, and type in something like a new task here, and I want to press enter and add that thing to the actual list. Currently, it doesn't add anything yet. Okay. So we already add this list of to-dos, and we updated the list of views. Ah, did we complete this part already? Okay, not quite complete yet. And so the first thing to do is to add a action to this text field. So here we don't have a button say called add. So instead it says when user press enter on the keyboard, it will save the text and create a new task. So in that case, we're going to need to use called return key press. And okay, and that's very small on this side. So what means is this is what happens. So that basically means, and that happen will be called when something is when the return key is passed. Sorry, is pressed. And you can see it says, and it called this function say on return press. Okay, so we're gonna just do that. So we're gonna find our text field, which is here. Okay. Oops. and then we say and oh when and return press. So that means when return press, that's a particular event, and then we're gonna call and run particular function. We'll call it on return. Okay, maybe wrap the text. Oh, that looks ugly. No, I don't need this. Okay, and so now what I defined is say I add a function or logic to this text field, and when the user press the enter or return button on here, and it should do something, and whatever is defined is in this function called onReturnPress, which currently we haven't defined it, so we need to define that first. So onReturnPress. Okay, we're going to do a very simple one just to show that it works. So just log a message, and it just say return pressed. Okay, you can see the screen fresh. That means it's done. And so what should happen now is when I go to my phone, I click here and I type in something, and then I press the return key. Okay, and you can see there's event registered here. It says return pressed. Okay, that means it's all working. Then you can now actually add in the logic and say, I'm gonna get the text and from what I typed in and add to my array. So that should be the easier part because we already all covered that before. So how do you do that? Any ideas? Any? Yeah, okay. So that could be one way. So you could say, so actually when we press the button, we push the text to the array where the text is already saved as text field value. And so you could say, where's the method? Yeah. You can say, this dot to do's dot push this dot oh, text field value. Okay, and let's see if this works. And so we go to the phone now, so you can see the cursor is there. This is the first new task. And enter. No, it didn't quite get it. And so it's hard to see on the screen, but actually there is something here. And it creates a space, but didn't get the text. Hmm. Sorry? In the okay, okay, yeah, okay. So misspelled and missing a value L there. Okay, let's try again. See if this will be work better. Second task. Nope.
Even in the V model.
Text field value. Text. Ah. Okay. Okay. third try. There. No. Mm. Vmod. Okay, let's see if we can console log that first. Text field value. Just to make sure. Okay, that's highlighted. That's all highlighted. Let's do it here. And new task.
Hi.
Yeah.
I already have the third try here. In the task.
Sorry, what do you mean?
You have third try.
Where? No.
No?
You mean this one here?
Yes.
No, that's where you type in the task. It actually should appear here, and you can actually see there's like a fade line already there, but the text is not. And because we are using the push, that should appear in the bottom. Let's just see. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I try to console log, see if we can get the text here, and if it doesn't get that text here, there's something wrong with it, so I have to go do something else. Let's clear the log. Okay, let's go back to the phone. I know typing something. Okay, false, try. Done. Yeah. Okay, and you can see in the text, and it gets the things I typed in correctly, but not in the list.
Maybe because they have the data.
Of course, of course. Yeah, sorry. So I just being a little bit lazy. So I have to actually push a JSON object, not just the text string. So, oh, can I do this? So what I should do is this. Does that make sense? So I should pushing a JSON object and has a property called name, and the value of the name is called this.text value or something. Okay, let's try again. Fifth try. Done. Yeah. Okay. So basically, you have to make sure the same format because, and here it saves as a JSON object, so all these has to be JSON object as well. And if here in the to-do array was string, then you can just push a string, which will probably, in this case, will probably be enough. And okay, let's see what they ask you to do. Okay, so in the tutorial, they use a new method called onShift. And so instead of using push, they're using onShift. The difference is onShift adds to the top of the array instead of at the bottom. So if I save, okay, so because every time you refresh, all the tasks will disappear. And I just type some random task and the press, and you can see if I use onShift, it appears top here. And Okay, I think we've done this part, so we move on to the next stage. Okay, and this part is about the setting and which tab gonna be the active tab. And so you can see we have two tabs at the bottom. One is called My Task, and which one? The other one is called Completed. And obviously, currently My Tasks and is the active tab, and you can actually control that use your code as well to switch between tab. And the reason we want to do that is because and later on, and we want to do is when user mark a task as completed, we automatically switch to the completed tab, so we can see that the task being added there. Okay, and first we create a new variable called active tab value, and use that to save um, the value of the currently active tab. So I say okay, and so far it shouldn't affect the app in any way because I just defined the value, I defined the variable, I haven't used it yet. Okay, so when you want to use that, it comes in when you're changing the active tab in the bottom navigation. So the example here is you can say selected index equal to this. So which basically binds the property called the select index to the active tab index, which is the variable we just defined. Then when you change the active tab index variable and it will change this property, then you can use that to switch tabs. And also it is another thing is it says add, that means event handler, so that means we on. Say selected index change, so that means when user change the tab, this will be triggered. You do this function, so on tab change, and we can see define what we want to do. Uh, and what we want to do when user change tabs. For example, we want to update this value here. Where did it go? Active tab index. So for example, when user change the tab to the complete, we want to update the value from here from 0 to 1. Okay, so we're going to do that now. So we'll, where was it? Bottom navigation. So we'll say select the index equal to active tab index. So we're going to use that later to use that to control. Okay, this is a bit ugly, but still better than none. And then when user change the tab, we say selected, sorry, index change equal to on tab. Okay, so far we haven't defined this function yet, so that will be the next step to define this actual on tab change function in our code. So again, so you should know by now. We just go to the methods section of your view and you define the new function. So I can put it here. So this function was called on tab, on tab change. And okay. So here we need to know which tab is being selected now. Oops. And we say this dot active tab index equal to so basically I'm just copying these things here. Okay, yeah, just to make it slightly more visual, you can see Okay, so I just add a console log there. What it says, and once it detects a tab change, it will console log what is the new tab index. Okay, so far currently nothing. And if I change from my task to completed, okay. Looks like there's quite a bit of error happening. Ooh. Fail to apply property color with a value to tab strip up to 10. Undefined is not valid. Oh, okay. Uh, so obviously there's something not quite right, but they still managed to print out this line at the very bottom. It says currently active tab is 1. That means it actually managed to um, run this line anyway somehow. We still need to figure out where is causing the error. Let's clear this one and I switch back to the old tab. Yeah, so that part is working properly, but still there's something which is causing the error. Failed to apply. Failed to apply property color with value to tab stripped item 8. Undefined is not valid the file or resource. So it's nothing specific to our code, I think. Okay, so I can't change anything here. So okay, let's just move on to see. We might be able to do most of the things we need, even with the error, which is not very clear. Um, so obviously, you know that error definitely caused by something of this. Oops. Because you add this to your code, so that change caused the error. I could take this out. Okay, let's give it a quick try. Say if I take this out, that goes to the original one, then it has nothing. So when I changed, okay. Hmm? Wow, okay. So it says field apply to property color to the value to the tab item 10. So even, that's interesting. So I'm not doing anything to, this is a bit weird. And because I'm not even calling the functions, I just added. So I added this function on tab change. Uh, but I'm not even calling this function. I'm still generating the error. So if I comment this part out, does it still have the error? Huh. What did we do? So it's not caused by this either. And this one, changing tab, yeah, still has the errors. Okay, and grid layout, label. Hmm. Um. So that's the only other things we did. And if that's still causing doesn't solve the problem, then it's not. Yeah, it still has the same error. That's very weird. Okay, and I might have to check that later. So at least we should be able to still move on. Okay. Okay. I might just use this code. Let's see if they have the error as well. Okay, it's a bit small, so yeah. Okay, so it looks like it's not an issue of our code. So what I did is I just copied the code from the examples provided here, and I'm still getting the exactly the same error at the bottom. So it doesn't seem like something which is to do with our code. Okay, so let's get back to our old app. Move on to next part. Okay, so basically all we did today, just now, is say to able to record to get which tab is active. That's all. Okay, okay, and so next part, we're gonna try to improve the completed task tab, and so far, it has nothing in it yet except just say a line of text. Now we're gonna create something similar to what we have in the My Task tab. So basically, add a list to there. So this part will be quite similar, and so probably the fastest way would be, I think, and list group. Yeah, so we go to the tab content items. We have the grid layout, which is fine, and then we just need to put in the list view under the label. So I'll just be a bit lazy, and partly because we already done this already, and I'll put that in first, and we can have a look what it does. This is really not very nice. Okay, and so you can see these are the maybe that's the reason. No. Uh, this is the things we added, and so we added a list of view. So we've done that before in the previous tab. So just add a list, and it takes a particularly position. So this is taking on now row 1. So I probably should call this row 0, just to make sure they don't overlap. Okay, and obviously currently it's empty, and it says for done in dones. So that means we need a second array which stores all the tasks which is completed, and we're gonna, for each of those, you do a view template, and which is already we did before, and then you add the name of that particular list. So what we need to do now first, and is just add a new array. So that's what we after to do. Now we have something called done. So currently it's empty, and once we add task to it, or to this array, and it should appear on the list here. Okay, so that's what we do. Okay, and the way you adding task to the completed list, and it's a bit different. You don't type in a task to say that's completed. So the way it works will be you mark some of these existing tasks as completed, and then it will be moved to the second tab, which is complete task. Doesn't do that. Uh, so what we'll need to do is we'll do some kind of event handler when user click on one of these tasks, and we'll give you the options to either say mark it as complete, and then in that case it'll be moved into the other list, or say delete. And then so we need something like a dialog box, and give users options either to move and or delete the task. So that's what we'll do here. Okay, and so what first we need to do is to give a v-on function, or link the tapping event to each of these tasks. So to do that, we will go to where we created all the different tasks, which is here. So essentially, this is our list of these things. Now we're gonna it does two things, and but we're running out of time, so we'll probably have to get by with the just do this part. And so maybe I'll quickly explain and what it's saying here. And what defined here is actually defines two columns. So this label is in column 0, which is the first column, and next one is in column 1, which is the second column. When this one is tapped, so this is add tap or v on tap, which is the same thing, it will run this on to do circle tap function, and it will take an input, which is a to do item, so that will contain the name of the to do, pass to it, and then we're going to have time. So this in the second column, and which actually shows the task, so which actually shows say 3 dogs and ride a bike. When it's tapped, it will run a slightly different function called on to do item tap, and it still needs to do. Okay, and just because of the time, and we can only do this part. So we add, so, and partly because currently we don't have the first column either, so we will do text bind to this, and we say if it's tapped, I will do on to do item tap. Okay, that will be a function a little bit below. Okay, so this is where we introducing something called action, and you can see on the bottom right corner there. So that something similar to say the alert box, but actually you allow user to and to select something in there as well. So again, we probably only have time to just copy paste this. So let's add that to our collection of. Okay, and we're going to work through this. And so this function is called on to do item tab. If you remember, that is the function we used here. On to do item tab. Okay, and what it does, it defines a new variable called index. What it is, it says this to do's dot index of item. And so here, the item is the input. So that's the to do object passed from when the event is triggered. And this line gives you the position of these items in the to-dos array. Does that make sense? So basically, now it knows which item it is from the to-do list. Okay, and this is just in the string. Again, this is another string, so and there's a third string, so these and are defined just to make this slightly shorter. Okay, and so this is probably the more interesting part. And so the action is the one which actually will prompt a dialog box. Let me see if they have a picture here. No, they don't. Okay. So this will be the text that appears when user tap on something the first. And then it will have this cancel by default always. And these two other options we defined earlier, mark complete and delete forever. Okay, so it's maybe better if I just try it now. So I update the code. I'm now clicking on riding bike. Okay, and so this is what happens. So and what do you want to do with this task is what appeared here. The cancel always will be there. Is this cancel here? And mark the complete is here. And because mark the complete is defined as this text string, and delete forever is delete. So you can imagine you can have more options, and 3, 4, 5, and add it to this list. But basically, this whole dialog box is what action is. Yeah. Okay, and then the rest of the code here is actually do something. So far, the code up to here is to create this dialog box, provide a few options, and the rest of the code decides what to do when user made a selection. Okay, so first you have to use .then. So if you remember, that's a promise. That basically means it will not do anything until it receives a response. So it's the same as, and you will send a request to database and you wait the response before you do anything. So here you're waiting a response from the user. And so the results will be the user selection. User can select either of these three, so one of these three, mark complete, delete forever, or cancel. Okay, and then in this, so this line just console log the output user selection, so it's not doesn't really have any other particular purpose. So, do you know what switch does? Anyone knows what switch? So this is part of just JavaScript. No. Okay. Switch is used, so say instead of using lots of if else, say let's say you want to user to pick a color, and user has 5 options, and you can say if color equal to red, change the color to red. Then if color equal to green, change color to green. And you have to do if else like 4 times, 5 times. And instead of you can use and switch, you can say depends on the value of result. In case or in this proper side case, if the results equal to mark complete, and then you do this. So the syntax here is a bit different. So you don't use curly bracket or anything. You use a comma and followed by these lines, and this will stop when you had a break. If you don't have break, it will do the other things as well, which is probably you don't want. Okay, so this is probably most interesting. You will say mark complete when you use that. It says this done unshift item. Okay, if you remember, the item will be the to-do items you selected, and unshift. Do you remember what it does? Yeah, it adds to the top of the array, and but this is actually add to the done's. That basically means I'm gonna add a new task in the completed array with this user task user selected, and then for this particular array, for the to-do array, it will splice index and then 1. Okay, and if you remember, index here is the position of the current items in the array. Anyone remember what is a splice? That to the array? Yes, no? Sorry? Yeah. So the splice and remove something from the array, and so that's the position, and that's how many things you take out from the array. So that means I'm gonna take 1 out from the current item of positions. That basically remove current task from the to-do array. Okay, and finally, does anyone know what this does? No? Come on. Anyone remembers an active tab index? So we use that early on to bind. It's here. It says when you do the bottom navigation, the selected selected index is bounded to an active tab index. So now we change that value to 1. That means I'm going to change to the second tab, which is the complete tab. So that means I'm going to switch to the complete tab. That's all it does. Okay, and the other two conditions is slightly easier. So if you do delete forever, that just means you only do splice. That means remove the items from the array, but don't move that to the completed task. And you stop. And finally, if it's cancelled, then just don't do anything. Yeah. And so I'm gonna try that now, because it's already running. So I'm gonna choose mark complete. Okay. And then it goes to. You can see we move on to the complete tab, and you can see right back is there, and even doesn't display properly. So it's, how do I say, overlapping with the complete task, and that's probably because we didn't set the rows and in the layout. And but if you also you can if we go back to the my task tab, and you can see right back is no longer there. Yeah. You can try again. I say go grocery shopping. I can choose delete forever. So that's just done. And it's not moved to the complete task tab. Yeah. Let me see if we can fix the. Let me fix the overlapping on the complete tab. Oh, it's already set. Hmm. Oh, actually, let's try this. Of course, there's a button here. Okay, let's see. Ride bike. Doesn't even respond. Okay, so our previous version actually works better. So there's some problem with the okay, and so we might just stop here in terms, I think, in terms of actually coding. That's probably the rest of the tutorial is about changing the CSS formatting, and I think that's relatively easy. We don't really have to go through all of them. And the thing you just need to remember, all these different elements introduced by native script, you can just format them as normal HTML element. For example, and label is something new, but you can still just set font size or color just as normal HTML element. That's all it is. Okay, and so we're going to move on to the second part now, just because of the time. Is talking about accessing the REST API. So you would already have REST API. Let me close this one now. I don't need. Let me get the lecture slides first. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about the REST API. So if you had a look over the requirements for coursework 3, and you will need to access the REST API in the coursework, okay, and then here essentially means because we're running the code native script view in the playground, that means you need to access the REST API from the playground. And the first thing I want to mention is, and so far, most of you would be using localhost 3000 or 8000 or something port and to access, but localhost will not work with the native script view playground. Okay, and so the reason is the playground itself and is run on the native script server. So you will see the URL is always play.nativescript.org. And then, so in that context, and the local host means this server, not your laptop. Okay, and then obviously I guess in the most cases, the MongoDB and the Node.js server is not running here; it's running on your laptop. So that in sense, if it says localhost, it will not be able to find the things running on your laptop. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, just because the meaning of the local host changed and now becomes the play.nativescript.org and instead of your computer. Okay, no, yeah, okay, anyway, and so one possibility to access is using a full IP address. Do you know IP address? What is an IP address? Why do you need it? Um, okay. So you definitely would see IP address something like this. Okay? And something like this. So you should have seen that before, right? Yeah, that's called IP address. But what is it? Yeah. And why do you need it? Do you know? Yeah. Yeah. So So this IP address exactly is just as your address. Say my address will be say Middlesex University, the boroughs, NW44BT, UK, etc. So if you have this IP, you have these numbers, four numbers, you can find any computers on the network. So that becomes its address. Okay, and then so that's why. And if we come back to the actual slides, so where are the slides? Yeah. So if you know the full IP address of your computer, and you can say instead of saying localhost 3000, and you can say 158.9494.66 slash 3000. Sorry, column 3000. Then you'll be able to access the 3000 ports on this particular computer. And if the node server is working, and then we should be able to accept the request. Yeah. And so there's a couple ways to know your actual IP address. So obviously this is one. So if you just type in IP address in Google, and it will tell you what your IP address is. And this is what seen from outside your network. So this is say for people outside, because I'm currently connected to the Middlesex University Wi-Fi. And so this is anyone outside the university will see the IP address. Most likely, for each one of you, if you're currently connected to what's this called? MDX Uni, you would have exactly the same IP address. Do you want to try? So for those of you who have laptop connected to the Wi-Fi, can you type IP address in Google just to see what IP address you get? Do you have the same IP address or no? Oh, okay, okay, so different. Okay, that's surprising. Mm. Okay, and there's a bit more details into how this works. But again, we are running out of time, so we're not going to do that now. Uh, so, on oh, sorry, I think we jumped ahead a bit. So on Windows, to know your IP address, and you can run something called, uh, you can either use this, which essentially is just go to your network settings, and it will show your IP address. It's not even showing this picture. Or you can go to command line and run a command called an IP configure, and it will show your IP address in there. Okay, that's on Windows because I don't have a Windows machine, so I can't demonstrate this. And on Mac it's similar, and you can go to the system settings. If you are connecting through the Wi-Fi, and if you select the Wi-Fi collection, and it will show your IP address, or run a command line tools, which is called IF configure. It's slightly different. You can get that. Okay. So the bad news is, and even you have the full IP address, and it's most likely still not be able to access your local service. So the main reason is so most of the computers would have firewall running, and to block out most of the access requests. And so in general, you don't want anyone be able to access any random people being to access the service running on your computer. And so the solution will be you can either change the settings on your computer to allow. So basically, they called open the firewall port, so 3000, so external requests can come through. That's a bit complicated. And then the alternative will be to host your MongoDB and Node.js routes or Express routes online in a different server, so it's not on your computer anymore. So this is similar, say, to put the web page you created online so everyone can see it. For example, when you put it onto GitHub pages, everybody can see it, even if it's not on your computer. So you can put the backend, which is MongoDB and REST online as well. So there's an example called the Heroku, which allows you to do this. Again, we don't have time to get into the details of this, and there's a little bit more details. And so instead, we're going to introduce a tools, and called ngrok. And what it does, and the general idea will be, is this tools will map your local IP address to an online address. Then everybody can access it. Okay, and so this is what the website looks like. That's the URL, just ngrok.com. I don't know actually exactly how to say that. And if you go to that website, and you will have options to download the version for your operating system. So I take this screenshot because on my Mac, and so we'll say the Mac OS is the first option. Obviously, if you look at a bit later, so you have different versions for Windows, for Linux, and many other tools as well. Okay, and then the second step will be unzip it, because what you get will be a zip file. And the third step is probably more important, and you have to create an account. And after you create an account, you would get something called an authorization token. So that basically like a secret code to show that is you and you are registered with this tool. Okay, and you need to run this command here, which is slightly harder to see. It says ngrok authorization AUTH token, and this will be your tokens. And if you register account with the website, it will be replaced with your actual token there. So you just need to copy paste and run in the same directory where you unzip the tool, and that's it. That's installation done. Okay, and this is what actually using it. So for example, if I want to make my local host 3000 available, so I will type in ngrok. This is a protocol. We are using HTTP, and you can have other protocols, and it's 3000. And you should see something like this. And you can see you being recognized, and yeah, the web interface. But most importantly is these two lines. What it says is your local host and 3000 is now being mapped to this online address. Okay, so if you want to access this local host, you can use this address instead. It will do the same thing. So why this is useful is this is something that you can't access in native script Playground, but this is something Playground can access. So you can this way to access your local service. So you can still run your Node and Mongo on your laptop, and they'll be able to, and the Playground can access them just slightly slower. Yes, I think I only have time to do a quick demo. So let me find a local service that I can run. So probably the simplest one. Let me see, what do I have here? Okay, I think that will be good enough.